Thank you for joining me for another one of my videos. My name is Cliff. I've been doing a series called 99 Problems or More on YouTube for quite a while. I think I started that series of videos in 2015. We're in 2021 right now. I've made many videos, but I made this link of videos to slowly teach anybody, the viewer, that there is a God in heaven that wants us to repent, come to Him, and understanding that He sent His Son to die for you and me, our sins. And in this series of videos, a section were related to law and man's law. It refers to this material here in this book. This is what we live under. We don't understand the words and how they're orchestrated through this book, and this is why we are bound by the system that we live in. We are babies in understanding the law. This book is a dictionary. It's Black's Law Dictionary, and this is the 4th edition. Okay, I think we're up to 8 or 9 now, I'm not sure, but this one is the 4th edition, and it's a dictionary. This is a paperback dictionary as well, and it has words and the meaning of words in it, but this dictionary and this dictionary are different. This dictionary is legal language, and what most people don't understand is how to operate in the world that we have given our lives to. We don't know that we have given our lives to a certain entity or a corporation that operates under this book. And because we don't know that, this is why we have lawyers that that orchestrate our affairs under the understanding of the books like this. This book is everywhere in every modern society. Every country, they have one of those books that work the system that you are imprisoned to. This is another law book, and this law book is the true one that matters. It's the Holy Scriptures, the Holy Bible, the Word of God, God Himself. So I want you to listen to this guy. This is Rob Maynard. He's going to explain some of the things that we don't know as people that live in the society that we're in. His explanation is different than many others, but I do understand where his point of view is coming from, and I may not agree with everything that he says, but I want you to see it so you can get a little bit of clarity to the mysteries that we're working in. I did this, I started going around and saying that Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, is to return soon. And for this reason, I am able to be outside of this box that most people are imprisoned in. I work and do these videos for our God and Savior, Jesus Christ. But I am able to do this not in the same fashion that most people here on YouTube do it, because they need the assets or monetary gain from YouTube. I don't. Fortunately, I was able to hear the message that came to me and follow the instruction that was given to me. The Spirit of Truth that Jesus said He would send told me that He would take care of me. I didn't know what that meant, but I have had a lot of clarity about that part for a long time now. I don't know how God does His things, and I don't know why you are to believe in my Holy Spirit, because my spirit is the same as your spirit, the Holy Spirit that speaks truth. It's God's. I don't know how you're supposed to believe if you do not hear the things that I've heard whispered in my ear, like the scriptures say. But God is a God of love and mercy, and this I do know, and I do understand. So, no more rambling. This is pretty long material, and I know just because of the length of it, a lot of you are not going to watch it anyways. But it doesn't matter. God does His things, like I said.
The dictator of Turmania, the conqueror of Austerlitz, the future emperor of the world. You speak. I can't. You must. It's our only hope. Hope. I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, We need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
Now, in order to figure out where you want to get to, first you have to figure out where you are. In this little introduction, we're going to have a little chat about why things are the way they are, why they were the way they were, and how to get them to where we want them to be. Let's take a little look back in history.
20,000 years ago, alien lizards came from a planet called Nexarumbi and conducted genetic experiments on the existing Neanderthals, aiming to develop a slave race of super warrior monkeys in order to fight their enemies, the dreaded Neverundies.
Okay, so that's not true. 20,000 years ago, there were people just like there are today. There were the wise, the wicked, the lazy, the clever, the greedy, the easily fooled, and the gentle-hearted. Just like today. And just like today, someone realized they could get others to do their work for them merely by paying a little better attention. See, farmers had to plant with the seasons, and some clever men realized that they could avoid the backbreak labor by telling others when to plant. They came to this knowledge by watching the stars and seeing the patterns. But of course they did not want to lose the power monopolizing this knowledge gave them, so they mystified it and called themselves priests. They were the first deceivers. Things generally rolled along rather nicely from that point, with those who questioned the status quo being labeled heretics by the priests and promptly losing their heads in order to make the gods happy. This was the case until a short, mouthy, clever Jew stuck his head up and started beaking off. No, not that guy. Yeah, that guy. See, back in Jesus' day, very few people could read. The Pharisees, the scribes, the Sadducees, they could. People would go to them for advice concerning the law. And these Sadducees and Pharisees and scribes, they held very tightly to the reins of understanding. They did not want others to know what the law actually said. Essentially, people would come to them with food and ask them, "Can I eat this?" And they'd say, "No, you can't. We'll take it off your hands." But then they could eat it. They also made a lot of money and gained a lot of power by being the ones who understood all of this. And thus the standard peasant was pretty much in awe of these people who knew how to read, knew how to write, and knew what the words meant. Now this carried on for 1,000 years or so, but then along came Gutenberg and his press, and suddenly people were being taught to read. Suddenly the tradesmen figured out that they had been being lied to the whole time by those very same scribes and Pharisees and priests. So they got a little bit angry, and now that everyone, fast forward to the year 2010, everyone knows how to read. Well, not everyone, of course, but many people know how to read. So what do the scribes and Pharisees and Sadducees do? They shift a little bit and they become lawyers and judges and clerks in their courts. And they claim that only they can understand the words which they also claim govern everyone. The Income Tax Act in Canada is about 2,600 pages long. It's a very, very large body of words. We are all expected to follow it because it's the law. There's a man by the name of David E. Sherman. He's a tax lawyer. He's on the public record as stating, I'll paraphrase here, that detaxers don't know what they're talking about because they read the Income Tax Act. They think they're reading English, but they're not. It's actually the language of law, known in a great many places as legalese. And you cannot understand it unless you have training in the law. And yet this very same man has made a lot of money by having people come to him and say, look, someone's coming to me and demanding payment from me because of this body of words. And instead of him saying this body of words shouldn't have anything to do with you because you don't understand it, he has instead acted as a translator for it. This system has not changed much in 2,000 years. It's the exact same thing that Jesus was railing against. They claim that a body of words is your law, and then they also claim you are incapable of understanding that law, and only they can do it. And if you want to know what the law says, you have to go to them. This does not work in a common law jurisdiction. This does not support the rule of law. It does not respect human dignity. It does not recognize that equality is mandatory and paramount. And yet they also use very, very tricky words to get you into a position where you apparently consent to them saying this body of words which you do not understand is in fact your law. It's the biggest scam on the planet. It's been going on for thousands of years. They've all been doing it just in different ways. The simple fact is there is law. You cannot harm another human being. You cannot damage their property. You cannot use fraud or force in your contracts without the universe somehow unfolding in a manner that brings you great harm. That's the law. You can't jump out of an airplane without a parachute, and you can't go harming someone without shit coming back at you. You will reap what you sow. However, what they point to as law is not law. And in these 28 little vignettes of freedom, we will show you exactly how they have tricked you. We will show you exactly how you can find your remedy, and then we will show you how to actually do that. You do not have to spend half your life giving these deceivers your energy, your money, your property. There is remedy, and we can help you find it. However, this is not for the faint of heart. If you're looking for some way to go through life easily, you're going to want to go right back to the matrix they have designed for you. Go back to sleep and start thinking that you're something you're not. What we want you to do is realize who you are. And the moment you start realizing that, no one can come to you and demand your energy in this existence. Hope you enjoy our work. See, they don't just want your money. They want your fear, your respect. They want your energy. They want power over you. And they want you being weak. And the reason they want this is because it makes their life easier. They are greedy. They want a life of ease. They feel, for some reason, that there is a limit to the abundance and the peace the universe has for us. And they're wrong. I can teach you and show you how to achieve a level of peace and abundance in your life that will absolutely blow you away. And there's absolutely no reason or need to try to take from other people in order to achieve that. Certainly not me and the people of the World Freeman Society who are helping make this project possible. Now, this process, of course, is not going to be easy. It's going to require you to essentially wake up. It'll be a lot like you're stepping into the light. You will become aware of many things which likely are going to be rather difficult for you to accept. Your initial response will be denial and rejection, then anger. Then you will feel shame. Then you'll get past that, accept responsibility, and you will see an ability and an abundance open up before you, which you had never thought possible. You're going to have to learn to rethink the way you look at the world and the way you look at these words that people bring to you and claim are your law. You're going to have to be willing to stand against these people and learn to do so without losing sight of the need for compassion and the importance of human dignity. You're going to have to write some letters and engage in certain actions. You're going to have to file documents. You are, in fact, going to have to stand. And there is no way to become a free man on the land while sleeping and demanding others feed you and massage your feet. You have to learn to stand. It's not going to be easy, but I guarantee you this. If you do it properly, you will find a peace and abundance and a blessing that you would never have imagined. You will, in fact, be forever blessed. Fact is, you are already. You just got to wake up to it. So the first thing we're going to look at is we're going to examine what your relationship with the universe is. Because once you know that, then when people come and try to claim that you have a relationship with them and they're the government, well, if your relationship with the universe is stronger than yours with them, and if the universe is bigger than them, well, then I think we know where we stand. From a clearly logical and rational and reasonable perspective, examine the size of the universe and compare it to yourself. Examine the age of the universe and compare it to your life expectancy. Knowing that, you start to see how incredibly precious your time here is. And if that is the case, how can anyone justify giving a portion of that to someone else because they're pointing to words which are deceptive? You have far more power than the people in the government and the courts and the Law Society want you to realize. If you knew how much power you had, they would have none over you. So the first section of this little Freeman curriculum, I guess, we're going to break it down into 4 weeks. And in week number 1, we will look at the ways by which they have deceived you and convince you to remain asleep. Second week, we'll need these, because by this point in time, I'll be awakening you from your little slumber in your cave, bringing you out to a bit of sunlight. It's going to be bright, and I'll be showing you where the remedy lies. I will show you how you can achieve lawful excuse to disobey these people using a claim of right. It's going to be bright. It's going to be sunny, where you'll want to wear your protection. By the 3rd week, your eyes will have adjusted to that bright light, You'll be able to remove these puppies, although you won't because they look cool. And you'll start looking not at just where the remedy lies, but how to pick it up and use it. It's a simple process. You'll understand how to use a notary to witness this process, and you will serve notice on the people in the government. Or you'll learn how to do that. Because in week 4, that's when you actually do it. The goal here is to create a nation, a commonwealth of nations of free men on the land. People who understand what's going on, people who have recognized their power, their blessings in this universe, and having found their own heart light, bring it forth with a certain amount of power. Oh, and I'll save you a whole lot of money in taxes too. Oh, incidentally, if you're seeking to be coddled or have your hand held or patted on the head, this is not the course for you. Seriously.
Hello?
You have a driver's license, but you've never read the Motor Vehicle Act. You submitted an application for a social insurance number without any idea about what the word submit and apply means, let alone looking at the ramifications of having a SIN number. Pay your income taxes because the Income Tax Act tells you to, but you're incapable of understanding the Income Tax Act. You need to wake up. You've been badly deceived, but you have allowed it to happen, and because of that you've been a complete idiot. Now, I know it's difficult to accept our own idiocy, but you can't stop being an idiot unless you first realize you're being an idiot. And when we, as a group of people, allow such a small minority to use such clear deception to govern and dictate to us and extract so much for so little, well, we're being a group of idiots. And you need to wake up. The reason you need to wake up is because there is so much abundance waiting for you, it's not funny. Huge amounts. But if you sleep, as they wish you to, they get to feed you pablum and keep the abundance for themselves. There's plenty to go around. But it's not yours unless you wake up and get up and start figuring some of this stuff out yourself. Think about it. When you were in grade 3, you knew to tell people you're not the boss of me. That somehow is lost by the time you graduate university. Kids 120 years ago, 16-year-olds, knew all about a bill of exchange. They knew all this stuff that you're going to learn. They would not submit application for registration easily at all. They knew what a bill of exchange was. They knew what a tick was. They knew how to engage in basic commercial activities so that their butts were covered. We seem to have lost all that. And you can't tell me the subject matter is all that difficult when A, you pretty much knew it when you were in grade 3, and B, kids who were 100 years ago had a firm grasp of this information. If you're an adult in today's world, this stuff is easy. The difficult part is getting past the idea that you have been so badly betrayed and that you have been deceived through your own ignorance. If you want power over your future, you need to accept responsibility for your present and your past. And if you can't do that, you're going to find very little power in your future. You want to know what I mean by wake up? People will argue about their rights and their freedoms, never realizing that these stem from someplace. They do not exist in a vacuum. They exist because someone fulfilled their duties. Duties are the trees, and it is from those trees that the rights and the freedoms, the fruits of duties, come. Nobody enjoys any rights or any freedoms unless they or someone previous to them has exercised their duty. Every right, every freedom, born of the fulfillment of a duty. You want power in your life, you're going to have to start realizing that you have duties. and it is by fulfilling these duties you earn the rights and the freedoms for yourself and for future generations. Previous generations knew this, and if they saw what was happening today to Canada after their sacrifice, I think many of them would feel badly betrayed themselves. And I think we can do better. The reason you need to wake up is because essentially you're acting like children. And if you act like a child, and people who act as government get to treat you like they're your nanny and you're their charge. And thus, they get to administrate your affairs. And what you're going to learn is that your affairs are far greater than you originally thought. You're quite rich, in fact. Extraordinarily wealthy would be a far better description. But because you don't administer your own affairs, you don't see the benefit. None of these words mean what you likely think they mean, because although they look like they're written in English, it's actually a language called legalese, and it is what the lawyers generally use to deceive a population into consenting to their governance and control. Of course, it's all about money and how they put it into circulation. And of course, they offer it to you and you accept a loan so that you can do something like get an education. When in fact, however, the end result is a burden of debt, which will require you to go to them for remedy. They are like magicians, but they use words and they pull the law from their hat. In this lesson, we're going to learn what some of the more deceptive words truly mean, and we will look at how to figure out the meanings of other words. Now bear in mind, the meaning of a word is not given merely by its definition. That's only one part. You must look first at the assumption that the definition is resting upon. Then you must look at the implication that the definition creates. It is only by doing this that we can see the true meaning of a word. And the law is a very technical, highly accurate language. It appears to be very deceptive, it appears to be very ambiguous, when in fact it is very deceptive, but it is not ambiguous. It's only our ignorance that allows these words to be used in the manner that they do. And there's a maxim in law that states, "Let he who would be deceived be deceived." No one ever forced you to submit an application for a registration. No one ever stopped you from looking up what those words mean. And no one ever stopped you from deciding for yourself whether or not you wish to do so. In order to understand the power of words, you're going to need some tools. You're going to need some dictionaries. I suggest getting an English dictionary, a good one. Turn of the century ones are fantastic if you can find one. Get a Black's Law dictionary, a 3rd or 4th edition. Get a new one as well, just so you can compare it and see how they're changing the language. You'll want a Bouvier's dictionary and a Canadian Law dictionary. Collect them if you can. But bear in mind, the definitions you find do not give you the meaning of a word. The meaning of a word is only found when one looks at the assumptions that the definitions must rest upon and then examines the implications created by those definitions. It's by doing this that you will see the meaning of the word. And if you only look at the definition without ever looking at the implications and the assumptions, you will never understand the true meaning of it. Remember, the law is a lot like baking. And there's a rule when it comes to baking. If it doesn't have peas, it's not a chicken pot pie. Don't call it chicken pot pie if it doesn't have peas. And you must look at also this when it comes to the law. If there is no remedy, the liability is unlawful. Never forget that. Whether you're making chicken pot pie or you're deconstructing statutes, there must always be remedy, just like there must always be peas in your chicken pot pie.
Believe it or not, you're not going to be dealing with alien invaders from another planet using super magical weapons. You're dealing simply with human beings using words. That's all. Their greatest tool is to get you to assume that they know what the words mean and you do not. That's their greatest tool, is to get you to operate upon assumption that these words mean something that they don't. This is easy to deal with. It means you have the right and the power to ask questions. And if you start asking questions concerning the meaning of the words, they start to lose their authority. If someone comes to you and claims, this body of words right here gives me authority over you, and you must do what I tell you to do now, and you say, really? What does that word right there mean? And they say, I have no idea. What happens to their authority? Now, authority is a funny word because that's what we're all starting with. So let's look at that concept and start with this word, authority. Now, of course, within this word, we can see one word, and that is author. And then itty, author of the itty. What would this itty be? Well, actually, it was a contraction, and it was the author of the writ. Authority is actually the author of the writ. And that's where the authority comes from. And, hey, let's not forget the concept of equality here. You have the power to author your own writ. And that is essentially what we're going to end up doing eventually with the notice of understanding and intent and a claim of right. It becomes, when undisputed, just about as powerful as any writ. And it gives you the author. You become the author of the writ. So, who has the authority? You do. People who point to a body of words and cannot tell you what those words mean cannot use that body of words to claim power over you unless you're a complete idiot.
Now, if we're going to be studying the meaning of words, a lot of people think they can look at a definition, read a definition, and know the meaning. But that's not entirely the case. A definition really is simply someone's opinion, and a dictionary is a collection of someone's opinions on all the words they could think of. If we want to learn what a word's meaning truly is, we need to look at more than the definition. So meet me at camera 2. Camera 2.
Okay, so now what we're going to be doing is we are going to be determining what a word's meaning is in order to find the power in that word. As I said, many people, they make the mistake of looking only at the definition. We're not going to do that. We're going to look at the word application. Now, once you have a word's definition, the next thing you must look at are the assumptions that that definition is resting upon. And they always are there. Once you have examined the assumptions that that definition is resting upon, then you must look at the implications that the definition and the assumption creates. It is all of these three together that will tell you what the power of that word is. And that's what the meaning is. So let's look at the word application. What is its definition? If you look it up in Black's Law Dictionary, you find that it means to beg. To beg, to plead, petition, implore, entreat, or request. But essentially, it is to beg. Now, let's look at what the assumptions are for those who are begging. What are these assumptions? One, he who begs, they generally know exactly what they're begging for. They know what they want. Another assumption must be that they know what they're willing to give up for it. For the most part, if you're begging, it means zero. The other assumption is that since you never beg for something from someone who doesn't have the power to grant you the thing you're begging for, the assumption must be that the beggar accepts that there exists a grantor. Some power capable of granting the wish or the desire or saying yes to the request or the begging. So knowing these assumptions, now let's look at what the implications are within knowing this. Now we're talking about begging here. The beggar must know what they're asking for. They must know what they're giving up in exchange. They must accept that there exists a grantor. The implication of all of this, if you start thinking about it, one, it must be entirely voluntary at all times. No one can force you to beg, request anything. And since you have to give something up, and that is an act of abandonment, no one can ever force you. And therefore, the act of application must always, by virtue of its definition and the assumptions that definition rests upon, the implication is it's always voluntary. The other implication is that since you're recognizing over here the existence of a grantor, and it is the beggar who is initiating, that's the other assumption we must, because the beggar is always the one initiating the contract or the interaction. So they're always the initiator. What does this imply? It means that the grantor must be free of liability. The other thing is, since the beggar apparently knows exactly what he wants, what he's giving up for, and acknowledges the power of the grantor, the implication is that he loses the ability or the right to claim deception. Of course, if you don't know what the word application is, you're going to get hooped, not because of their deception, but because of your own ignorance. But the implication of the word application, through the definition and the assumption, the implication must be it's voluntary, the grantor must be free of liability, and there is no deception on the part of the grantor. What this means, now we get to the power of the word. What this means is, this word has a certain amount of power, and what it does is it transfers liability. To the beggar. So even if you're going to someone who has the liability to begin with, and they have a duty to provide you with some goods or services. And then they say, would you please fill out this application? And you do. You have just, by virtue of the fact that you have begged, transferred their liability and accepted it, and you have freed them from any claims that they might be acting in a deceptive manner, any claims that they are liable, and you can't ever claim that you were compelled to do it. It's why it's one of their trickiest words. And this is why, in order to understand the power of the word, when you look at a word, you must look at the definition, analyze the assumptions, and then deduce the implications.
A human being is not a person because he is a human being, but because rights and duties have been ascribed to him. Specifically, the person is that legal subject or substance of which the rights and duties are attributes. But not all humans are persons, as was the case in Old England when there were slaves. Black's Law Dictionary, 3rd edition. One of the biggest problems many people seem to have is understanding exactly what a person is. Now, I've stated before that you aren't a person, you have a person. And in order to understand what I mean, I ask that you look at the meaning of the word person and the assumptions that it's resting upon, the implications it creates. Historically, a person was a mask, refers to a personage, and it was what people wore when they were on stage. Now this is very important, because if you come to, say, a masquerade party, and you're wearing a mask, and you're in my party, then I can pretty much assume that you're my guest, and you have agreed to act within certain parameters. Some people think that they can enter into an agreement with their person, or as they refer to it, their straw man. The courts have recently held that that's not in fact possible. It would be very much like me entering into an agreement with my mask. The mask is evidence of a person, or let's, for the purpose of this demonstration, this mask is the person. It's a legal fiction. It exists so that others can interact with me, and so that they have evidence of my consent to their governance. That's why you can't enter into a relationship, into an association with your mask. Your person isn't something which exists in association with you so much. It is something that exists because of an association that exists between you and other people. And saying that you're going to copyright your name, or secure your person, or redeem your person, to me doesn't make much sense. Either you're in a relationship, in an association, and thus you have a certain body of rights and duties, or you are not in that relationship and you are free of those duties and you have no claim to the rights or benefits. People have tried to act as agent for their person in court, and it has failed repeatedly.
Many people have what I believe to be seriously erroneous beliefs concerning what a person is. They believe it was created by the government, that it exists completely distinctly from them, that they can seize it, perhaps redeem it, or enter into agreements with it. I do not see how that is legally possible. Your person is that thing which exists because of a relationship between you and another party. It identifies your rights and your freedoms and your duties and obligations within that relationship. I don't see how you can enter into a relationship or into a contract with something that exists because you're in a contract with someone else. Suppose a man and a woman get married. They become husband and wife. Now the man then decides that he wants to enter into a relationship, an agreement with the husband. And then he goes out and he has sex outside of marriage. And the woman, the wife, comes and angrily asks him, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he says, "Well, it wasn't the husband who was cheating on you, it was the man." Is that possible? Does that make any sense? I don't think so. Your person identifies you essentially as a child of the province. attempting to enter into an agreement with it and going to your nanny and saying, look, I'm in agreement with this thing which identifies me as one of your children, it merely confirms the fact that you are acting like a child. Your person is considered to be a benefit. And I guess if you're choosing to live your life irresponsibly, it might actually be one. However, if you accept the benefits, you're bound to bear the burdens. And to refuse to bear the burdens because you enter into an agreement with the legal entity that exists because of an association between you and the people who take care of you, it does not make lawful sense. Furthermore, I believe this has already been looked at and judicially reviewed by some courts, and they found that the human being and the person are entangled to such a degree that you cannot enter into a relationship with it. You need two separate parties to contract, and although you have a person, and this person is not you, it exists separately from you in that you can disassociate from it. But if you are associated with it, that's it, you're associated, and that person, which you point to, is evidence of a relationship not between you and the person, but you and the people in the government. If you choose to wear what they consider to be essentially diapers, and then write on these diapers, my property, the fact that you've written on those diapers, my property, in no way changes the fact that you're still wearing diapers, and they will get to treat you as if you're wearing diapers. Imagine for a moment you go to a concert and you get a wristband, and they have different wristbands. One wristband allows you access upper levels only. Another wristband allows you access lower levels. Third wristband allows you access backstage. These are three separate rights and duties with certain obligations associated with it. You're the human being wearing the wristband. Can you enter into an agreement with your wristband that would change what the security people are going to allow you to do? If you were wearing a wristband that says you have access to the upper levels, can you write on it, oh, Rod, the man wearing it says backstage is okay, and then suddenly end up backstage? Obviously not. Your person is very much like that wristband. It's not you, but it does identify your rights, your duties, your obligations, your benefits, your burdens. It does not identify you, the human being. You cannot enter into a relationship or an agreement with it because it evidences an agreement between you, the human being, and other human beings. You can, however, disassociate from it and thus become a free man on the land.
Heidi, so what we're going to do is we're going to have a little chat about people and their persons. Now let's suppose you're a human being and your name is John Adam Doe. First of all, I think we can all agree that your parents really lacked any sort of imagination, and I feel sorry for you. Might make identifying your body very difficult. However, let's suppose this is your true name. You're a living, breathing human being, and we start right there. This is the name that is found on the record of live birth or in your family Bible. Now, John Adam Doe here, at some point, decides to engage in certain activities. Now, these activities, let's say he gets a social insurance number, he applies for one, through an act of application. He opens up an account with the Canada Revenue Agency, and this is the name on it. Now he has, by his own action, engaged in application, and now he is accepted certain rights and duties. Now let's suppose also he goes and he gets a driver's license. He applies for that, and now he has certain rights and duties under that driver's license, and again, it's always through an act of application, submission of application on your part. He joins the army, and they decide to give him the name Doge A, and that's what they use. Let's say he needs a hunting license. So he gets one, again through the active application. Let's say he gets a health club membership card, and he uses the name John Doe on that. So now you have a human being who has certain rights and duties. And as you can see, with every different spelling of the name, you have a different body of rights and duties. And it is
how to operate as a creditor, as a sovereign.
now, with this whole creditor and debtor thing, I see a bit of a problem with it. Certainly no one wants to be a debtor. And a lot of people then say, well, if being a debtor is bad, being a creditor must be good. And they assume these are the only two options. Yet, without sounding like a Bible thumper, I've learned a whole lot about the law by looking at the teachings of Jesus Christ. The man knew the law. And his advice was to be neither debtor nor creditor. And therefore there must be another option. And looking at it, I mean, what is our goal here, folks? I like to say that we're looking for peace and abundance. Now here, if what we're looking at, let's look at it, we want peace and abundance. If you're the debtor, it might be difficult to get any of that. If you're the creditor, however, your abundance will always be a function of the debtor's ability and willingness to pay. And if he has neither, you have zero abundance. Now, what can a creditor, there's a big difference between a creditor and a debtor, and there's one fundamental thing a creditor can do in terms of a loan, which a debtor may not do. And what is that one thing that a creditor can do that a debtor cannot? Forgive. The creditor has the power of forgiveness on their side, and they can forget the loan or forgive the loan that exists between them, and now the debtor is no longer the debtor. Now, the real problem with being either of them, I see it, is that it does require you, if you're the creditor, you're placing a demand on your fellow man, and you can't forgive it. If you're the debtor, then you've placed a burden on them without sharing one back. Is there someplace else, though? The big problem that I see is that all of our abundance, what people like the anti-terrorists there are talking about, they're talking about positioning yourself to be a creditor so that you can demand money. And they equate abundance with money. Now the problem with this is that the people who put the money in circulation can restrict the amount of money out there, thus create a situation where it's very difficult for the debtor to meet the demands of the creditor, and therefore neither of them enjoy any abundance. Being a creditor doesn't guarantee abundance when your abundance is a function of the amount of money in circulation and its value. Make all the demands you want. It doesn't mean anything past a certain point. So saying join the system, learn to be a creditor, to me, I think that's kind of wrong, because you're betting that your abundance will be a function of the amount of money available which you can demand from other parties. Now, what if there is, in fact, another source of abundance? Let's examine that. Because that's what it's about, abundance. If we have abundance and we don't have to fight over it, we'll get peace.
You guys who are planning on checking out of the system, My question to you is, how are you going to get your gas and your electricity and your water? These utility companies have a monopoly and they refuse to contract with you on a private basis. They need your person to be able to give you those things, and you need your person to get them. So unless you're going to live in the forest and use the methane escaping from your dung heap.
Now, what I'd like you to do is imagine for a moment an island, an actual geographical area, say. Now, in this geographical area on this island, there is a house. And in the house, you have a parent and a child. Now, you also have another building over here, that's a shopkeeper. And the parent goes to the shopkeeper and engages in commerce. Now, the child wants to go to the store and buy stuff for the house, but he needs permission from the parent in order to engage in commerce. This is essentially the situation as it exists now with the government. And what the anti-terrorist is suggesting is that if you do not stay in the house and maintain that child and ward relationship with the state, then you don't have a right to go engage in commerce, and you should leave the island. And it's complete baloney, because you can grow up, and if you want, you can create your own house. You can be the adult in your own house, and you can go and engage in commerce whenever you want. You do not need this party's permission, and you do not have to obey the rules of this house, and you do not have to leave the island. This person that he refers to is the person that identifies you as a child of the state. But bear in mind, a person is that legal subject or substance of which the rights and duties are attributes. This guy right here, the kid, can in fact have a person, and that person will be deemed to be a ward of the state, and using their permission they can go and engage in commerce. It's all fine and dandy. But that child can also grow up, become a man, and do all of that all by himself without permission from this government state agent nanny. And he does in fact have a person. But his person is now on par or is equal with this adult and is not equal with the child. Let's suppose that this here represents the country and this here represents an estate in that country. People, when they, if they belong to a very rich families, they have a rich estate. When they grow up and they leave the house, some of the funds from that estate are still used, are still sent to him. He can collect it, and oftentimes it'll be in the form of a trust fund until he's maybe 30, at which point it transfers to him. The anti-terrorist position is the only way to go here and buy things is with their permission. And if you don't have their permission, you must leave the house. And you must leave the whole island, the town. You must go live out in the bush. I'm a free man on the land. I've got the right to engage in commerce. I'm not going to live out in the bush. And anything the child can do with permission of their nanny, of their their parent, this guy can do without any permission, just as lawfully. So his position that you should keep your person, otherwise you have to leave, otherwise you don't get the benefits of commerce, and you have to go live in the bush, all three of those points are completely wrong. The only thing that is affected is you won't be able to claim that this party here has a duty to feed you or put diapers on you, but nor will that party have the power to put diapers on you if you don't want them. A lot of people consider the person to be merely this child, and if you grow up, you're abandoning your person. But more likely, if you look in the criminal code and in certain other acts, you'll find that they refer to persons and classes of person. This guy right here, person. This guy, a person. This guy, a person. This guy, a person. But they all have different rights and duties. Your person doesn't necessarily, just because this guy says I'm a person and this guy says I'm a person too, doesn't mean they both have the same level of rights and duties. Because this guy's a person as a ward of the state. So yeah, he's a person, he has rights and duties. But his rights and duties, he's going to have less rights than this person over here. Some people seem to equate a person with a ward of the state. And a ward of the state is merely one class of person. Now, folks, here's the fundamental problem with the whole creditor-debtor thing. It doesn't shift where we are looking for our abundance. It's still looking at fiat currency, the creation of which we have very little control over. And then they think because now you're a creditor instead of a debtor, your demands are going to automatically be met and meet your needs and bring you abundance. And I don't think it's going to work. Now the problem with that, of course, is because people are equating their abundance with their access to resources. And this is a simple graph. This is what we're facing. The number of people is increasing, the number of resources are dwindling. And when we get past this point right here, we get into this area where the number of people and their needs is greater than the resources. That's what essentially is hell on earth. And the problem with that is not so much the number of people, but that those people believe their value and their abundance is a function of their access to the resources. What if there's another place to find abundance? Now, where would we find it if not the resources? How about this? How about we find our abundance in the people? If we find abundance in the people, and now I'm not saying use the people as a resource, you know, a la Soylent Green, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, what if the abundance is actually a function of the people's creativity? Then you start to develop a situation where your abundance will be a function not of how much resources you have managed to withhold from your fellow man, but how much inspiration you have brought them to be creative. And when people get creative like that, they start to enjoy an abundance. And whether or not it's just learning to play music, whether or not it's learning to be creative with figuring out energy needs and ways to meet them. By focusing on increasing our fellow man's creativity, we will find all the abundance we need. It'll end up being where you have people where you go and you give them a potato and you teach them to cut it open and plant 4 pieces, and they get 50 pounds of potatoes out of it. They come to you saying, look, I've got extra potatoes. And that one you give them will come back to you 7-fold. When people start realizing that abundance should be a function of our creativity and not of our ability to monopolize resources, we can actually avoid this situation, because although the people will increase and the resources might necessarily dwindle, our ability to share and use the resources we have is what's going to save us. Okay, folks, so bear in mind what we're aiming for here is greater peace and abundance. So what this implies to me is that we must avoid conflict, and that means we must study how it comes about. Having looked at it rather extensively, I've come to the conclusion that just about all conflict is a result of one thing. And that is when one party feels that they have been denied something which is due. And that one thing is almost always dignity. Now, dignity, it can manifest in certain ways. Some people might know it as respect, honor, kindness, compassion, all of these have the effect of causing the recipient to feel a greater level of dignity, and they feel raised up. And almost all conflict is a result of one party feeling that they have been denied dignity due. Now, even when it comes to resources, if you're arguing about water, one party might feel, hey, I need water to live, and when you deny me water, you're denying me my right to live, and therefore you're denying me my dignity. Just about every conflict can be pointed, if you examine it, will lead back to someone being denied the dignity they felt was due. And it was done in such a manner that they felt fighting, conflict, and aggression was justified at that point. So if we want peace and abundance, we want to avoid conflict, what does this then necessarily imply? We have to increase the level of human dignity around those around us. If you want to avoid conflict, act with compassion, kindness, honor, and respect towards each other. You won't end up naturally in conflict, and you will be granting people the dignity that they feel is due. Now the trick, of course, is how do you do that? And again, you use any of these tools. Give them respect. Give them some honor. Give them some kindness. Give them some compassion. Merely be aware of their existence when they didn't expect you to be. And you'll be surprised at what can develop when you do that. Oh, and incidentally, I can talk about all these things, but that doesn't mean I'm an expert on it. I know I need a lot of work in being more patient and compassionate and treating people with the dignity they're due. But at least I'm working on it. Words. Also, what I would like you to do is rate, comment, share, and favorite this video. And if you can afford it, a small donation to PayPal will certainly make my Christmas much merrier. And on that note, I hope you guys all have a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, a killer Kwanzaa, whatever's going to float your boat. I hope it floats far and wide. Well, folks, if you enjoy these lessons, the fundamentals of freedom, please make a small donation to Mr. Mighty, MRMITEE, at excite.com. Couple of bucks, $5, $10. If everyone who were watching these lessons and found value in it donated $5, I would do I would do quite well, I hope. And it would certainly help motivate me to do the 30 or so lessons that I'm trying to get done. They do take a lot of energy and effort, though. I do hope you find value in it. And if you want to support my efforts, small donations are gracefully and gratefully appreciated and accepted through Mr. Mighty at excite.com, PayPal. And yeah, do it. It'll make you feel good.